So let's begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai, and let's do our prayers to glorify the Bhagavatam, verses from the Bhagavatam. Rayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sasthatya samhito jaya. By regular, before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer their respectful obeisance unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan, Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Srinvatam Svagada Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Vedyantas Loya Vadhyaya Shri Krishna, who is the Paramatma, the super soul within the heart of each living entity, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses the heart of material desire of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nashla Prayeshma Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Yutama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishliki. By regular hearing of the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, almost all that is troublesome to the heart will be completely destroyed. And love of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Alright. And now let's chant the prayers to the Gurus. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Viditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Vidati Svapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Bhadagalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Ladita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurani Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishna Bhani Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpa Tarubhishcha Kripasindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashya Deshatarine. So we've evoked all of the blessings of our Guru Varga, the lineage of Gurus, all the way back to the most recent incarnation of the Lord, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then all the way back in disciplic succession to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So we are going to share text 40 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Where are we? Kunti Devi is lamenting because Krishna is about to leave her physical presence. She was relishing for so many years that Krishna was in their midst, in and out. And now, after all of the calamities of the world have been resolved by Pandavas and Krishna, now Kunti is actually lamenting and praying for the calamities again, because in the midst of the calamities, Krishna was there to help sort out all the calamities. So similarly, in our own life, we can take this. If everything's going quite swimmingly, just as we'd hoped and desired, there won't be such an impetus to come towards the Lord. But if things are calamitous, it's actually our great fortune, because in the midst of the calamities we can very easily remember the Lord and very easily move our consciousness towards the Lord. And this actually is even the case when the Supreme Lord is himself present with you. So Kunti Devi, she's wise and is praying like that. So the last two verses were glorifying the Lord, and she said, as the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and Yadus, will end at once. Meaning that all of the name, the fame, all of the ability, everything is dependent completely on the Lord. O Gadadhar, Krishna, our kingdom is now being marked by the impressions of your feet, and therefore it appears beautiful. But when you leave, it will no longer be so. So these are the last two verses. Now we're on text 40. Again, she's lamenting, does not want Krishna to leave, but he's got plans. So let's see where it goes. Text 40. Ime janapada svridha. Ime janapada svridha. Supakvo shadi virudaha. Supakvo shadi virudaha. Vanadri nadyudanvato. Vanadri nadyudanvato. Yedhante tava vikshitai. Yedhante tava vikshitai. Ime. All these. Janapada. Cities and towns. Svridha. Flourished. Supakva. Nature. Oshadhi. Herbs. Virudha. Vegetables. Vana. Forests. Adri. Hills. Nadi, rivers, Udanvanta, seas, he, certainly, Edhante, increasing, Tava, by you, Vikshitai, seen. Translation, all these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance. The trees are full of fruits, the rivers are flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. Prabhupada says in his purport, human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. The gigantic industrial enterprises are products of a godless civilization, and they cause the destruction of the noble aims of human life. The more we go on increasing such troublesome industries to squeeze out the vital energy of the human being, the more there will be unrest and dissatisfaction of the people in general, although a few only can live lavishly by exploitation. The natural gifts, such as grains and vegetables, fruits, rivers, the hills of jewels and minerals, and the seas full of pearls, are supplied by the order of the Supreme, and as he desires, material nature produces them in abundance or restricts them at times. The natural law is that the human being may take advantage of these godly gifts by nature and satisfactorily, flourish on them, without being captivated by the exploitative motive of lording it over material nature. The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, the more we shall become entrapped by the reaction of such exploitative attempts. If we have sufficient grains, fruits, vegetables, and herbs, then what is the necessity of running a slaughterhouse and killing poor animals? A man need not kill an animal if he has sufficient grains and vegetables to eat. The flow of river waters fertilizes the fields, and there is more than what we need. Minerals are produced in the hills, and the jewels in the ocean. If the human civilization has sufficient grains, minerals, jewels, water, milk, etc., then why should it hanker after terrible industrial enterprises at the cost of the labor of some unfortunate men? But all these natural gifts are dependent on the mercy of the Lord. What we need, therefore, is to be obedient to the laws of the Lord and achieve the perfection of human life by devotional service. The indications by Kunti Devi are just to the point. She desires that God's mercy be bestowed upon them, so that natural prosperity be maintained by His grace. So this is, indicating the symptom of our godless civilization, where everything's about exploiting the little guy, and ultimately the tops, the CEOs, only the few get to actually live lavishly. but actually in the natural order of things, but living in a very natural, harmonious, God-centric way, actually everything's in abundance, all the things that we actually need for a flourishing society. The trees full of fruits, the rivers flowing, the hills full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to the Lord's mercy. But now, because the Lord is not shining his mercy as evidently, even though he's shining even more mercy in this Kali Yuga, all these things are diminished. You go to any local river, you're going to get like all kinds of pollutants. You're swimming in pollution. You go to any, what trees do you see that bear any fruit outside of an orchard that you have to plant yourself? And, the hills, I don't find any minerals on the hills that I've traversed. I'm not really looking. But anyhow, it's becoming more and more scarce in Kali Yuga. And the ocean's, full of wealth. Even though there are people at the ocean, I see them with their metal detectors looking for wealth. They're not giving nearly as much wealth as once it was. Why? Due to the godless civilization. But you can see, do a practical test, an example in your life. Add God to your life and add godliness to your life, and just see how prosperity, and what, not prosperity in the sense that you're going to be like Tesla and all these other big guys who are exploiting the material people of the world, but you can actually see you'll have everything you need and more, and you'll have so much less anxiety in your life. So this is obvious. It's obvious, right? So she's glorifying the Lord as the provider of all abundance. So if you want prosperity, abundance, all that one needs, I'm not saying that should be your driving force to worship the Lord, but that's a byproduct. So anyhow, if you are ever feeling lack, the lack is not in the actual resource. The lack is in the godliness. The lack is in your own endeavor to make the Lord a huge part of your life. That's the lack, because he's the provider of all those things. So let that be your driving force. Next verse, 41. Atha vishvesha vishvatman vishva morte svakeshu me sneha pasham imam chindhi dridham pandushu vrishnishu Atha, therefore, Vishva Isha, O Lord of the universe, Vishva Atman, O Soul of the universe, Vishva Morte, O Personality of the universal form, Swakeshu, unto my own kinsmen, may my Sneha Pasham, tie of affection, Imam, this, Chindhi, cut off, Dridham, deep, Pandushu, for the Pandavas, Vrishnishu, for the Vrishnis also. Well, this is going to be a tough verse for, especially if we have Craig and Michael in the room who are family members, but if one is very attached to the family members, this will be a tough verse. Translation. O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please therefore sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord is ashamed to ask anything in self-interest from the Lord. But the householders are sometimes obliged to ask favors from the Lord, being bound by the tie of family affection. Srimati Kunti Devi was conscious of this fact, and therefore she prayed to the Lord to cut off the affectionate tie from her own kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. The Pandavas are her own sons, and the Vrishnis are the members of her paternal family. Krishna was equally related to both the families. Both the families required the Lord's help because both were dependent devotees of the Lord. Srimati Kunti Devi wished Sri Krishna to remain with her sons, the Pandavas, but by his doing so, her paternal house would be bereft of the benefit. All these partialities troubled the mind of Kunti, and therefore she desired to cut off the affectionate tie. So just so a little context. Krishna, the reason he's going back is he's going back to Kunti's his aunt. Kunti on one side was born of the Yadu dynasty, but she was married into the Pandu dynasty. So now she has affection for her sons as the Pandavas, But at the same time, if Krishna is with the Pandavas, then he won't be with the Yadus, which are her other sides of family. So she's really troubled here that, it's a lose-lose situation. So she's actually asking that he actually cut the ties from her affection and relation with the family members. Because I don't know if you, me and my wife experience this. Every Christmas we have to try and somehow balance out how to please all the family members. And what you end up finding out is you can't please any of them. So anyhow, you try to do as much damage control as possible. But this is actually due to our affection for the relatives that is causing us all this trouble. Now, even in context to where Krishna is to go is troubling her, but she's recognizing this as a symptom of bondage in the material world, and she's asking the Lord to cut this, because this is ultimately, even with her own sons, who are great devotees, we never want to be cut. But you actually see this in the relationship between, say, Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. They're father and son on the material level. But on the spiritual level, they're actually elevated and advanced devotees, and you see the way that they interacted was beyond any type of father and son relationship. It was as equally elevated devotees, or maybe even a senior devotee in Bhakti Vinod Thakur, guiding a junior devotee who became a great acharya in his own right. One of the greatest acharyas, yes.
I mean, it's actually one of the reasons I wanted Michael to come live here, was to help him become more detached to his family.
Yes, I think that was very wise of you to do like that. And ultimately it'll be for your great benefit and Michael's great benefit, because he'll make much more devotional advancement, distancing from the family, not saying there's anything wrong with the family. The family is fine, it's good, it's part of it's necessary for the material world to go on. But at the same time, and even for yourself, Michael as your son is completely different than the relationship between devotees. And I see that in you guys, that you have this relationship. And even doesn't matter if it's a father and son, or husband and wife, or father and child, because I'm also having a son soon enough. But it ultimately, if I think of him as my son who came from my body and my own family attachment, this will actually only cause me misery in due time. So ultimately, it's wise to cut off these affectionate ties, because ultimately they're illusory and they have to do with solely the body. And that's ultimately not what we're here to cultivate, not bodily consciousness. We're trying to cultivate she used a word in this verse, Vishva Atma. The soul of the universe is Krishna, and we're trying to connect with our own soul, which is beyond the mundane body and mind. So anyway, Prabhupada continues, a pure devotee cuts off the limited ties of affection for his family and widens his activities of devotional service for all forgotten souls. The typical example is the band of 6 Goswamis, who followed the path of Lord Chaitanya. All of them belonged to the most enlightened and cultured rich families of the higher castes. But for the benefit of the massive population, they left their comfortable homes and became mendicants. To cut off all family affection means to broaden the field of activities. Without doing this, no one can be qualified as a Brahmin, a king, a public leader, or a devotee of the Lord. The personality of Godhead as an ideal king showed this by example. Sri Ramachandra cut off the tie of affection for his beloved wife to manifest the qualities of an ideal king. If you know the end of the Ramayana, this is very prominent. And it seems almost like unjust, but ultimately you're seeing the mercy of the Lord is broadening. And actually the devotee who cuts off ties of affection for their family, you don't want to do so callously or inappropriately. But actually it should be. Why? Because you're trying to broaden your affection beyond just the small scope of your family, for all of the forgotten souls. So such personalities as a Brahmin, a devotee, a king, or a public leader must be very broad-minded in discharging their respective duties. Srimati Kunti Devi was conscious of this fact, and being weak, she prayed to be free from such bondage of family affection. The Lord is addressed as the Lord of the universe, or the Lord of the universal mind, indicating his all-powerful ability to cut the hard knot of family affection, very difficult bondage. Therefore, it is sometimes experienced that the Lord, out of his special affinity towards a weak devotee, breaks the family affection by force of circumstances arranged by his all-powerful energy. By doing so, he causes the devotee to become completely dependent on him and thus clears the path for his going back to Godhead. This actually happened with Srila Prabhupada. He was trying to very earnestly make his family situation work out nicely. But not unfortunately, fortunately for us, his wife couldn't fully get on board and became ultimately inimical to his devotional advancement. And what did she end up doing? The last straw is he had written, I think it was the first time, his Srimad Bhagavatam commentary, and she was in English, and she was so much craving tea and biscuits or whatever it was, and she literally sold Srila Prabhupada's English commentary on Bhagavatam that he's putting his life and soul into for very mundane material things. She was a devotee. It wasn't that she wasn't a devotee, but she ultimately couldn't get on the same platform as him. Michael and Craig, I understand the situation. Hare Krishna. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, we'll see you guys again soon. May you guys break your family attachment. I'm just kidding. But really cultivate attachment to the Lord. That's the main thing.
Oh, you're just starting.
What?
Once your son comes.
Yeah, I know. Please remind me. Keep reminding me. I'll need help.
It's very, very difficult.
I'm sure it is. I'm actually already noticing with my wife as well. We've developed an attachment to each other. But actually, if we really become broad-minded devotees, it should range beyond just our own
And
self-interest.
actually, now that all the kids are out of the house and stuff like that, there's actually a relief, a liberation from that a little bit. Because they're not there to be so attached all the time in their daily activities and everything else. It does help with that.
Yeah.
So you've got about, 18 years?
I probably have more than that, I think. But please pray for me. So wonderful. Yes, so Srila Prabhupada, he experienced this firsthand, and I can sense, at least in these last two sentences, that he is speaking from his own realization of what happened to him in that lifetime. So, but that was the last straw, and he ultimately decided that he was going to take sannyas after that. He tried for many years, even tried to raise all the children as devotees, all of the, his wife, even she was a devotee. It's not that she wasn't a devotee, she was a devotee, but basically because she was only willing to go so far, that she actually became an enemy to his furthering his advancement, because she couldn't actually go to that next plane, that next level. So Prabhupada had to make the break and take sannyas.
Well, he didn't even take sannyas right away.
Well,
He just left.
Yeah, he
took
left.
sannyas maybe a year later.
Yeah, something like this. So anyhow, don't do that to me. So we'll see, or maybe I won't do it to you. Hopefully, I don't do it to you.
We don't give as much scope to do this problem.
So anyhow, 42. Tvayi me nanya vishaya matir madhupate sakrit ratim udvahatad adha gange bogham udanvati tvayi unto you me my ananya vishaya unalloyed mati attention madhupate O Lord of Madhu asakrit continuously ratim attraction udvahata may overflow adha directly Ganga the Ganges Eva like Ogham flows Udanvati down to the sea. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. This is very nice. Purport. This is a good, we'll probably end here. Perfection of pure devotional service is attained when all attention is diverted towards the transcendental loving service of the Lord. To cut off the tie of all other affections does not mean complete negation of the finer elements, like affection or for someone else. This is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others, because this is a symptom of life. So we're not here to be like callous. We're not here to be like, cold, aloof from all people and of the world. The symptoms of life, such as desire, anger, hankerings, feelings of attraction, etc., cannot be annihilated. Only the objective has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated. We see this in a lot of Buddhist meditation, philosophy, a lot of people, even Mayavad philosophy. Get rid of all desires, get rid of all of feelings, thoughts, emotions. These are all illusion, they say. No, this is natural of the symptom of the soul. But what we desire, what we ultimately, how we use our anger, our hankerings, our feelings of attraction, this has to change from that which is illusory or temporary, the things of this material world, to ultimately that which is eternal, the Supreme Lord. You even see how devotees like Hanuman and Arjuna and Bhima, they use their anger for the service of the Lord. Oh, you're blaspheming the Lord and his devotees? I'll kill you. Literally, that was their kind of position. They were great warriors, so they could act from that platform. But us, ultimately, we should desire what Kunti desires. Ultimately, the intimate service and the intimate attention of our attention to fully be into the Lord. Very nice verse. So only the objective has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated, but in devotional service, the desire is changed only for the service of the Lord, in place of desire for sense gratification. The so-called affection for family, society, country, etc. consists of different phases of sense gratification. When this desire is changed for the satisfaction of the Lord, it is called devotional service. There's a couple big things here. Well, what's the main problem? What is our desire lying in that's hurting us?
Sense gratification.
It's in sense gratification. Well, what's wrong with sense gratification?
It's our own enjoyment.
What's that?
It's just about our own enjoyment.
Is it really our own enjoyment? The answer is actually no.
But we think it's our own enjoyment.
It's an illusory enjoyment. It's not real. It has something to do with a temporary situation. It'd be like sitting there identifying with your car and overwaxing the car all day, every day. Just let me massage my car, stick this in the tailpipe. Whatever it is, it's all like just a bunch of craziness. But ultimately, like, sorry. But ultimately, I was thinking of there was a Netflix special where this person had a romantic relationship with their car. And it's just like an absolute insanity. But we're actually like that. We have this such affectionate relationship with our body and our mind and our intelligence, the scope of using our body. But ultimately, we're beyond all these things. But what do? We have desires for the gratification of the body and its senses. And what's so wrong with that? It's actually an illusion. It has nothing to do with the good of any other soul, nor does it even have to do with the good of our own soul. So it's actually a really big problem. But if we shift that towards what? It's in there. The service of the Lord. Actually, this is what is beneficial for the soul. This is the soul's actual nature. This is what the soul was manifested to be. A part and parcel of the Supreme. It's actually a glorious nature, and we ultimately we settle for such a perverted and distorted so-called version of ourselves. But ultimately, family, society, country, there's great nationalists, Gandhi and Martin Luther King and all these, who identify, I have to fight for my race. I'm an American, I have to fight for my people. Or I'm an Indian, I have to fight for my people. This is actually just extended versions of sense gratification and extended versions of identifying with your body. Ultimately, the soul is beyond all of these things. So we have to ultimately, just like Kunti Devi, hopefully we have this intelligence and realization that instead of having all these affection for all these other things, where should the affection go? Just like the Ganges, one pointedly goes towards the ocean. where should our affection go? It should go unto the Supreme Lord, known as Krishna. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we can see, Prabhupada continues, that Arjuna desired not to fight with his brothers and relations, just to satisfy his own personal desires. But when he heard the message of the Lord, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, he changed his decision and served the Lord. And for his doing so, he became a famous devotee of the Lord. For it is declared in all the scriptures that Arjuna attained spiritual perfection by devotional service to the Lord in friendship. The fighting was there, the friendship was there, Arjuna was there, and Krishna was there. But Arjuna became a different person by devotional service. Therefore, the prayers of Kunti also indicate the same categorical changes in activities. Srimati Kunti wanted to serve the Lord without diversion, and that was her prayer. This unalloyed devotion is the ultimate goal of life. Our attention is usually diverted to the service of something which is non-godly or not in the program of the Lord. When the program is changed into the service of the Lord, that is to say, when the senses are purified in relation with the service of the Lord, it is called pure, unalloyed devotional service. Srimati Kunti Devi wanted that perfection and prayed for it from the Lord. Her affection for the Pandavas and Vrishnis is not out of the range of devotional service because the service of the Lord and the service of the devotees are identical. Sometimes service to the devotee is more valuable than service to the Lord. But here the affection of Kunti Devi for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis was due to family relation. This tie of affection in terms of material relation is the relation of Maya, because the relations of the body or the mind are due to the influence of the external energy. We were giving a nice example of Michael and Craig. Yes, physically, body, father and son. But actually, Craig had a really nice realization that he wanted to actually send Michael off with the devotees. Why? For his devotional well-being of wanting to break that family affection to some degree, that attachment, and his own attachment. So relations of the soul established in relation with the Supreme Soul are factual relations. When Kunti Devi wanted to cut off the bondage, but the relation of the soul, she meant to cut off the relation of the skin. The skin relation is the cause of material bondage, but the relation of the soul is the cause of freedom. This relation of the soul to the soul can be established by the via medium of the relation with the Supersoul. Seeing in the darkness is not seeing, but seeing by the light of the sun means to see the sun and everything else which was unseen in the darkness. That is the way of devotional service. So Prabhupada ends with some poetry here, or analogous understanding. So ultimately, the sun is seeing from the relation of the Supersoul, that the Supreme Lord is within everyone and everything. Actually, our family members, nor our partner, our wife, or our child is no more connected to the Lord than anyone else, any other part of existence. So the devotee becomes very broad-minded. The devotee doesn't, the pure devotee, I should say, doesn't, ultimately, that's what Arjuna had to do to fight the Bhagavad Gita. He had to become very broad-minded and give up his family attachments. There was what the Lord wanted, but ultimately there was even the basic dharma. And his own blood and skin were going against that. And he had to act. It was his duty. And then on top of that, it was ultimately revealed that's what the Supreme Lord wanted. There's many things that we have in our program that's not in the Lord's program. As Prabhupada was saying, we have to be okay. Not only okay, we have to shift. Our program should be the Lord's program. All right, the Lord is arranged like this. That's it. Okay, He wants me to be penniless on the street. I hope not. That's not part of my program that I'm thinking about, but maybe that's part of His program. We don't know. So we have to ultimately dovetail our program with the Lord's program. And that's what Krishna consciousness is. We have so much other consciousness, ungodly consciousness. But if we truly have Krishna consciousness, the Lord's program is our program. And that's what we're training to do right now, right? That's why, even I know it's not always easy to get up early and not always easy to want to go through the program. Even myself, I'm like, oh man, I got to set up the arti. I got to do it, again. Even I got to chant my rounds. I've taken a certain commitment. But ultimately, the reason I do this is because I understand that eventually this is going to lead me towards that one-pointed attention. I'm like in a training program here. It's not always, oh man, I got to cook for the Lord again this morning, or oh man, I got to help clean the Lord's temple, or help maintain the Lord's house of worship here. It's not exactly part of our program, but when we make it part of our program, then we're guaranteed the ultimate success of life. And this is what Kunti realized. And this is actually probably one of the most important verses of the whole teachings of Queen Kunti. So anyhow, I wish you all that blessing. That's the nature of the Bhagavatam. It transforms you. After you read this and it really settles in, because we could skim through everything. I could go read it really quickly. I did that one the first time I read it. But to really just marinate in it and like really digest it, it'll change your consciousness. You'll have the realization that, oh, my consciousness is on so many diverted things away from the Lord. And the wise put their consciousness on the Lord. So be wise. You guys are getting wisdom every day. So thank you. That's 9:02. I'll end here.